meeting will come to order. We are now holding our regularly scheduled meeting held Tuesday, July 7th, 2009 at 9 a.m. And at this time, I'd like to call on Deputy Teddy Floyd to give the invocation, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be followed by Commissioner Joseph Flesher.
Good morning, welcome. Let us bow our heads. Father, we thank you. We thank you for our officials. We thank you for our sheriff. We thank you for every city manager, everyone that's in the sound of my voice, God. We ask now that we make subtle decisions, God, in a time that is very, very, very hectic, God, that we make the right decisions. And when it's over, God, we'll give you the praise. Let us say amen.
Amen.
Please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our great nation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Flesher, and thank you, Teddy Floyd. Okay, next item on the agenda will be the additions to the agenda. We have a change on the forfeiture trust fund. He just handed it to me by the sheriff, and it should be $14,000. In our backup, it said $15,000. So you have the modified section of that, and also the clerk already has a copy. Anybody else, Commissioner?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Before we do that, I'd like to request that we add something to the agenda.
This always scares me. Yes, sir.
I got a letter here from Glenn and Graw Attorney's Office on Route 60. And I've been out there a couple of times and looked, and the state has culverted Route 60 from 84th or 82nd Avenue all the way through to about 74th. And the only place they've neglected to culvert is in front of Terra Plantation. And I would like to request that we do a resolution asking the state to include that in their project.
I'm in favor of that. I understand exactly what you're talking about, and I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings or anything on this, but I don't know how effective that's going to be.
Well, I don't either, but it's worth we know if we don't do something, we aren't going to accomplish anything. So at least we can try.
Well, and I guess really where I'd like to leave it is not to say that, okay, this is all we're going to do. It's going to take more than that in order for us to get this done. But any other thing, commissioners? All right.
Just added under Commissioner Wheeler's matter.
I'm good with that.
I'll amend my motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Got a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Was there a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you.
I might add, I see Mr. Graw's in the audience. If he's interested in saying something on this, if we could move it up now instead of at the end, that's up to you.
Well, there's other people in the audience also, and whenever it shouldn't take us very long. Well, if you let us. So if there's anything else, commissioners, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, next moves on to proclamations and presentations. We got a presentation for the certificate of recognition to Corey Richter as a recipient of the State EMS Injury Prevention Award for 2009, and this will be presented by Commissioner Peter O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, we're going to be recognizing two of our outstanding employees here, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to read these certificates. Corey, do you want to come on down? And I see you have a little entourage there. Did you want to bring anybody else down with you, or? They're pretty fast learners, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
All right, well, welcome, Corey.
Thank you.
This certificate of recognition is hereby presented to Corey Richter. On June 30, 2009, at the State EMS Advisory Council meeting, Corey Richter will be the recipient of the State EMS Injury Prevention Award for 2009. This award honors an EMS professional who has demonstrated outstanding initiative and promoted best practices to prevent injuries and other EMS educational activities, as well as saving lives on the front lines of Florida's EMS system. Corey has been employed by the Indian River Fire Rescue Division for 16 years, starting as a paramedic, and then through continued education, he earned several promotions until December 2005, when he was promoted to Battalion Chief Quality Assurance Training. He is currently serving on the State of Florida's Emergency Medical Review Committee, Chairman of the Public Information, Education, and Relations Committee, and appointed member of the Emergency Medical Service for Children Committee. Corey's leadership skills are evidenced by the success of his subordinates as they handle emergency situations professionally and with applicable knowledge. Corey is very active in the community. He was the founder and served in various positions with the Sebastian Area Soccer Association and remains actively involved. In addition, Corey is chairman of the City of Sebastian Recreation Advisory Committee, a referee with the United States Soccer Federation, and a league umpire with the Sebastian Area Little League. Therefore, this certificate of recognition is presented to Corey Richter for achieving the State EMS Injury Prevention Award for 2009 and for his dedication and commitment to the residents of Indian River County. Presented the 7th day of July, 2009, signed by all 5 county commissioners. And Corey, thank you not only for the job you do professionally, but for your community involvement and making Indian River County one of the best places to live. And would you like to say anything? Or?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner O'Brien, and thank you all commissioners for this is truly an honor to receive not only the proclamation from you guys, but the award from the state. It was a surprise to me. I didn't even know I was put in for it. A friend of mine on one of the committees put me in for the award, and when they actually called for the award, I thought they were telling me about Paul's award, because I did put Paul in for his award, and they told me that I won this award, and I said, well, what about Paul's award? I was like, it didn't hit me, so it's truly an honor, and I appreciate it. I want to just thank my chief, John King, for the support that I get, and Ed Prom and Brian Burkeen. They give me the support to do everything that I do, and the programs that we're doing out here are really helping. We're starting some new programs here for injury prevention in the county that I've been instrumental in get going. So it's all prevention. If we can prevent even having to go to the house for a fall call or something like that, it's worth it. So we have too many injuries out there that are preventable. And I thank you.
Well, Corey, thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
I did bring this is the plaque that I got.
Okay.
I'll show you guys that the state gave us the other day. So.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Thanks, Corey. Hey, they dressed you nice today. Congratulations, Corey.
All right, our next presentation is a presentation B. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul, you want to come on up? I think it's a great day for the county when we have a couple of our employees that receive this kind of recognition with a statewide award. And we're very proud of the work these guys do, and it's my pleasure to present this. Certificate of recognition is presented to Paul Button. On June 30th, 2009, at the State EMS Advisory Council meeting, Paul Button was the recipient of the state's EMS Dispatcher Award for 2009. This annual Excellence in EMS Award recognizes the outstanding efforts of men and women who serve their communities through injury prevention and other EMS educational activities, as well as saving lives on the front lines of Florida's EMS system. Paul has been employed by the Sheriff's Office for 11 years, serving both as a road deputy and in dispatch. Paul has received many awards throughout his career that demonstrate his commitment and service to the community. Paul has been awarded the Honorable Service Award, Exemplary Service Award, Going the Extra Mile, and a Life-Saving Award from the Sheriff's Office. Paul is active with the local Cub Scouts as a den leader and teaches them first aid, CPR, what to do in an emergency, and calling 911. Paul also provides first aid, CPR, and 911 sessions for congregation members of Crossroads Church. On October 29, 2008, Paul took a 911 call from an Indian River County resident whose husband was unresponsive. Paul took control of the situation, directing the caller step by step to begin CPR. Paul was able to keep the caller performing CPR until Sebastian police arrived, who continued CPR until county fire rescue personnel arrived. The patient was revived en route to the hospital, survived the event, and was released from the hospital. Therefore, this certificate of recognition is presented to Paul Button for achieving the State EMS Dispatcher Award for 2009 and for his dedication and commitment to the residents of Indian River County. Presented the 7th day of July 2009, signed by all 5 county commissioners. And Paul, it's certainly an honor when you've been able to save a life through your actions over the phone and your commitment to the community. You make all of us proud to know that we have some great people working here for Indian River County. Thank you.
Thank you for the recognition of the award. Being a 911 dispatcher is usually a very thankless job. So if you ever happen to talk to a dispatcher, make sure you say thank you for the job that they do. And it's just nice to be recognized. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate what you do for the county and the community. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Want me to go back down and pedal there?
Jeff, would you like to have his supervision staff come on down too as well?
Come on, Sandy. Come on, Lou. Come on, Sheriff. I'll throw you under the bus. I don't have a problem.
Hey, Sheriff. As long as you're here to get them out.
This way.
Sure. Hey, Sandy. How you doing?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Very good.
Congratulations, Paul.
Okay, next we have the approval of the minutes for the meeting held June 9th, 2009.
Approval.
Motion for Commissioner Wheeler, second by Commissioner Flesher. No discussion. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. And for June 16th, 2009.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Wheeler, second from Commissioner Flesher. There is no discussion. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Moves us to the consent agenda. Commissioners, anything you'd like to have pulled? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you for being here today, Commissioner Wheeler, making all the motions. I've got a motion from Commissioner Wheeler and a second from Commissioner Flesher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, that moves us to the constitutional officers. Sheriff, welcome. This is the constitutional officers. A, Darrell Lohr, Indian River County Sheriff, fiscal year 2010. Edward Bryan, I guess it's Byrne, isn't it? Byrne.
Let's see, Byrne.
Memorial, Justice.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Wheeler and a second from Commissioner Flesher. Yes.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, Sheriff.
This is a wonderful grant that we also are actively pursuing, and as you've read in your backup, there is no match required, and this is certainly going to enhance our computer programming as far as tracking incidents and episodes throughout the county. So thank you for your time.
Okay. No further discussion?
Sheriff, thank you. And Poole, thank you. Keep on finding the money.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
We're digging.
Motion passed unanimously. Next, Sheriff, this is the forfeiture trust fund. The Commissioners, just to let you know, this was where you had the $1,000 change.
Move approval.
Move approval. Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Flesher and a second from Commissioner Wheeler to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Congratulations, Sheriff. Passes
Thank you,
unanimously. All right. Moves us to the public hearing on the public items. This is to public hearing to amend section 305.13 and 305.14 of the code memorandum dated June 23rd, 2009, page 203 to 206 in your backup.
Good morning,
Ms. Bell,
Commissioners. Marion Fell for the County Attorney's Office. This is a public hearing to amend an existing surcharge that is now $15. We're asking to increase it to $30. The surcharge is applicable to non-criminal traffic offenses such as virtually all your moving violations and certain criminal traffic offenses such as fleeing the scene of an accident. Staff projects that this the fees will generate an additional $56,000 to fund law libraries and an additional $170,000 to fund court facilities. The existing surcharge has been in place since 2004, and now the legislature is allowing us to increase it. We ask that you open the public hearing, take public comment, close the public hearing, and adopt the ordinance as presented.
Commissioners, you got any questions before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, okay, we'll now open the public hearing. This is a public hearing to amend section 3.05.13 and 3.05.14 of the code. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Let the record show that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
That we not increase the fee.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify. Yes, sir.
Take the motion.
That we not increase the fee. Is there any discussion?
Is that, Commissioner Wheeler, is that just, you want to find other areas for the funds for this, or?
Well, I think, all across the country, we're increasing taxes, and they're on the horizon. And it's just like the red light cameras that the city of Vero Beach has put in. It's a revenue-creating source. We're in tough times, and this is something that, just like other forms of government, I think we can figure out other ways to cut and not sock it to the taxpayer.
I concur, Commissioner. I felt this way about the additional fee for the dog registration, the additional fees here. A fee is a tax, and a tax is a fee, I guess, and so that's my.
When you're working and making $300, $400, $500 a week, and you get a traffic ticket costs you $200-300, it's a hardship, particularly in this economy.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other discussion, Commissioner? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of not approving the changes to increase the fees signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. That moves us to the county attorney matters and then to community development. Approval of bid for rehabilitation of 5 homes under her. Did I skip something?
There's 3 public discussion items.
There's 2 more public discussion items.
Sorry about that.
Sir.
I was jumping to that. Public discussion items. Yes, to speak from Cyril Knowles regarding the budget for 2010. Cyril? Okay. In the event. Oh, come on. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Well, I didn't know where I was on the agenda either, so.
Trying to keep up.
Welcome, Cyril, and the floor is yours.
My name is Cyril Knowles. My address is 7855 91st Ave, Vero Beach, 32967. And I'd just like to say a few things about the budget for 2010 for the Sheriff's Department. Just personal and things that I've talked to other people about. Since the new Sheriff Lohr has taken over, I've noticed a lot of changes. There were 7 captains, now there's 3. But the excess in lieutenants that were put in place, I think, has made the whole system top heavy. I worked there for roughly 13 plus years before I got hurt. We never had 2 administrative lieutenants. We never had 2 administrative sergeants working upstairs. I think that's a waste of money. I don't even see the reason why it's got 2, unless it's wrote down somewhere and I'm missing it. But 2 administrative sergeant or lieutenants and sergeant is just too many. I remember when Sheriff Wheeler was there, he only had 1 each, and the sheriff before him only had 1 each. I got a problem with all these take-home cars. You know, it's like Mr. Wheeler said a while ago. These are tough times. Every dime we can cut back, we should be cutting back to the county taxpayer. I mean, we're paying 7% now, which, if I'm not if I understand this right, Mr. Davis, wasn't the 1% added years and years ago for the sheriff's department? Is that wrong?
Mr. Baird may be the best one to answer that, Mr. Knowles.
No, actually, that was added in 1989, in November of 1989, I believe, we added the additional, the commission voted to add the additional penny, but it was mainly to build for infrastructure, not just for the sheriff, but to build a new jail.
The sheriff's department got part of it.
Yeah, and it was to build roads, libraries, rather than have them on your ad valorem taxes. But it was a decision made by the commission.
I understand. But the sheriff's department got part of it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm trying to hurry up.
May I say, just to clarify and make it a little clearer, the 1% was for capital improvements in the county, and the money the sheriff's office got out of that 1%, they didn't get a percentage of it. They got capital improvements like the new wings to the jail being built, et cetera.
Right.
So they didn't get a percentage of that 1%. They got whatever the cost was. And also the jail is the responsibility of the county commission, and we've made the sheriff the custodian of that.
Okay.
I just wanted to clear it up. See,
Thank you, Sheriff. Or Mr. Wheeler.
Sheriff's okay. I don't mind.
X.
I'll have to remember that.
You got me off stride here. Oh, in other words, 2 administrative lieutenants. Let me redo this now. I'm talking about the jail. I don't know much what goes on in the uniform division since I was never over there. I was always at the jail. But jobs, policies and procedures, I don't know if they go by that or not. I know sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I don't know if that's the way it normally goes, but that's another issue I have, is policy and procedures. Is that set in stone, or can it change your mind? Okay. Trying to hurry up as fast as I can. The take-home cars, that was where I was at. Is it necessary for a bunch of lieutenants and captains to get take-home cars? I don't think so. We're paying the taxes on them. We're paying for the cars. It's tough times. You know, we need to cut back on money, and I'm sure those people can drive their own car to work. I drove myself to work for many moons, and I imagine you guys do too. Why should a person have the consideration of not having to pay for gas, insurance? In other words, you can get rid of your car. I've seen deputies go shopping in their cars, toting grocery sacks in their uniform. I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's not right. Some of these are my main issues, but the jail is overloaded with too many creative jobs that require a lieutenant or a sergeant. I don't know what them guys do upstairs all day, that 2 lieutenants and 2 sergeants. I have no idea what keeps them busy. The last time I was upstairs, they were standing in the hallway talking. But, you know, this isn't here and there, but the take-home cars, the lieutenants, the sergeants, they have more Indians or chiefs than they do have Indians. And I think it's time for them to cut back. Might even have to lay off somebody. Other people from their jobs are getting laid off. I mean, what's so different about the sheriff's department? Other sheriff's departments haven't cut back all over the United States. different counties. This one hasn't cut one person, and I don't know when, unless they got fired or for some reason. In other words, I'd like to see some changes made for 2010. I'd like to get the budget below, shouldn't be no more than this past year, 09.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. And I believe we have the date set for our budget hearings, don't we? Or the workshops, I mean?
23rd and 4th,
Yes.
I believe, in July.
And if you would like to jot those down, Joe, we have 2 days set aside for it. I would suggest, sometimes it just takes the first day if my mind serves me correctly. So,
What date?
July 24th and 25th.
23rd, 24th.
Okay, excuse me, 23rd and 24th.
23rd, 4th.
I'd be here on the 23rd, though. We may finish in one day.
I think we moved it to the 24th and 25th.
Oh, it is? Oh, that's right, you moved it, didn't you?
I tell you what, Mr. Knowles, if you
I'm sorry.
Here's
I'm
my
sorry,
thought.
you're right, the 23rd and 24th.
Okay.
I'm in the wrong month.
Okay. And I've got
Pencil in the week.
one of my cards here. If you want to, I'll see to it that you get notified of it. That would be the best time during that workshop and then the public hearings also to come down and refresh our memory on exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I'd like y'all to keep this in mind when the budget starts.
We certainly do appreciate
Sir,
your
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Sir, I might also suggest between now and the 23rd, perhaps if you get with the sheriff and, take a look at what they're doing in the budget and ask those questions and see what they say and which would better prepare you and also, there may be good explanations or bad, but I think they'd probably spend the time to go through that with you so you understand clearly. If you don't know what the administrative lieutenant or sergeants are doing, and I can't answer that at this point, but it might be a good idea to, and he's here, you could probably set that up and meet with somebody and go through their budget with them.
With the Sheriff Lord?
Yes.
That would be fine, Mr. Knowles.
You want to do it again?
Sure. We've met several times with a lot of individual ones.
And it didn't work
Okay, I
out?
wasn't aware of that. Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Knowles.
Well,
there's
me and Sheriff Lord sat down and talked. I voted for Sheriff Lord. But since last year, things haven't done. He just, I guess it's a lack of communication.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Knowles. There's my card, and stay in touch, and I'll see to it that we get you the proper dates and as well as a notification on that. Thank you. And he gave his name and address for the record, right? We have it in the backup. Okay. Thank you. Next, we have the request to speak from Mr. Paladin, Atlantic Coast Construction, regarding return of cash bond for sidewalks in area not being built. Mr. Paladin, welcome. This is 208 through 255 in your backup, Commissioners.
Morning, Commissioners, Mr. Collins, Mr. Baird, ladies and gentlemen. I furnished some backup on this. Usually when I speak on public discussion matters, I just do it by thought process, but I thought there was some stuff that you should see on backup, so that's why I furnished you so much backup. I don't work real well off notes, so you'll have to kind of work with me on this. The first thing I like to start from the go a little ways back and start from the beginning, and I'll try and make this as brief as possible. Approximately, I would say, 3 years ago, we got a CC on a subdivision called Paladin Place 2. At that time, to get our CC and get our plat recorded, we had to put up a letter of credit for sidewalks in a townhouse area. We had most of the lots pre-sold. Matter of fact, we had all the lots pre-sold in the townhouse area, but we couldn't close on the lots until we recorded the final plat. So I put up the letter of credit from my bank at that time in order to record the final plat and in order to get the CC. That went forward rather smoothly. We closed on the lots, closed on whatever other lots I had already pre-qualified for closing, and we went forward. Now, at the time, the people that bought the lots, the one person bought all the lots on the one street where all the townhouses are. They were planning on going forward and build those townhouses immediately. Matter of fact, at that time, my real estate company was booking reservations to close on those townhome lots, and we had over 40 reservations for 26 lots. But they took quite a bit of time trying to get bids, trying to get a builder that could build them for the price they wanted based on what our architectural review committee said they had to do. And they negotiated for quite a while. One thing led to another. It kind of led into the end of the year. By that time, the market was starting to turn around. There were other townhouses starting to come out of the ground, so now they had competition. So to make a long story short, it went into the end of the year. At that time, the banks were starting to tighten up then, so they weren't renewing letters of credit for over a year. So, caught by surprise, I couldn't get the letter of credit renewed, so I went ahead and put up cash with the county to cover the letter of credit. And we went forward, and they kept negotiating, and then by that time the market went quite a bit south. And they basically decided they were going to put the project on hold until the market got a little bit better, so they were going to set on their lots that they own. And I had no control over that, so I had to sort of go along with that. Moving on a little bit longer, further into the discussion, led us into the third year, the end of that year, which would be the third year, which meant that the maintenance bond I had up was coming up for review, which we've done. And we had that inspection, and that's been approved. And, you know, we've kept the subdivision up excellent, I think. And it's been a hardship to do that for the past year or two, because you're not collecting, you know, HOA fees. And the HOA fees I did collect are at $45 a month, as low as you could possibly be. And it's difficult to keep up a whole subdivision unless you make the shortfall yourself, unless you overburden the people with just a few people that are paying the HOA fees. So I've done that. I've made up the shortfall myself. And if you drive past the subdivision, you'll see all the landscaping and all the entries and all the lighting and everything's kept up perfectly, in my opinion, and everybody else's opinion too. So moving along, the first thing that I'd like to go ahead and read is to go back, and when we started this request for getting the sidewalk bond, or the cash money for the bond released, because we agreed not to build on the section that was the townhouse section. All the common area sidewalks are done, and they were complete at the time, along with everything else. So right out in February, we passed a new ordinance, 2009-002. And I'll read you a piece of that in a moment. But that basically gave us a opportunity to say that we weren't going to build on a particular section that didn't, you know, hopscotch all over the place, and basically defer the bonding for sidewalks. So we put in a request to the county attorney's office to release the cash bond. And that's where I'm going to start. After that request, the first thing I'm going to read is dated March 26th. This is a letter from the county attorney's office to Mrs. Paladin. That's my wife. She was handling this. Mr. DeBall passed on to me your request for a sidewalk deferral. We have a process in place that starts with the application. I've attached an application for completing. The application asks for 4 8.5 by 11-inch plat maps. Please make sure that the plat maps that are attached are the recorded version showing the plat book and page. You should be able to print them from the clerk's website. Once the application has been completed, please return it to me for further processing. If and when the deferral is approved, we will prepare the proper covenant and send them to you for execution by the proper party. There is no fee for this. However, you will be responsible to pay the recordation fee of covenant. So that was the first in writing transmittal between the two parties, meaning me and the county attorney's office. And then next, this is the application that was sent to us, which my wife had signed and sent back on April 7th. And this is the map of the subdivision, which I'll show you a little bit later. It's marked on your backup where the sidewalk area is. Okay, next communications was basically on April 27th. And it starts out that Michelle, this is from the county, it's from Bill DeBrawl. In reviewing this application, it was noted that the Atlantic Coast does not own all the lots subject to the application. Are all the lot owners in agreement with the application? And then the next email transmittal was from us to Bill, and we said, thanks for getting back to us so quickly. Yes, the owners are all in agreement. So we called the owners, which was only one owner we called in that section because they own all the lots. So moving right along, quite a bit of time passed. So the next communications was around May 27th. And I had asked Michelle, I said, have you heard anything back on our bond? I said, it's kind of thinking we'd have that back by now. She says, no, I haven't heard anything. She says, Bill asked me if all the lot owners approved, and I told him yes. I said, well, maybe he needs that in writing or something. Just saying yes maybe isn't official enough. So then the next communication is, hi, Bill, I'm sorry to bother you again, but is there anything else I should be doing about the sidewalk deferral? That was on May 27th. So now we have 3 pages of emails, just short emails, between us and Bill and us and the owners of those townhouse lots. So we're starting with the first one, I believe, and it's from Angela Kelsey, who's a managing member of 510 LLC, who owns all the townhouse lots. And first Michelle says, she writes to Angela, are you going to be able to sign the agreement? Because we forwarded that copy on to them. The county attorney's office sent us another copy and said, seeing as how I didn't own them, that I had to get the 510 group to sign them. So we sent them the form. So then after that, Angela writes back, I am preparing to sign the agreement. My understanding is that by doing so, we will be releasing you from your responsibility to maintain the sidewalk bond, thereby taking on that responsibility ourselves when the time comes to sell or build on the lots. In your original email on this matter, the legal assistant writes, there is no fee for this, however, you will be responsible to pay for the recordation of the covenant. Am I correct in assuming that you will pay the recording costs or fees that arise? And we tell her yes, of course. And then the next page, going through that, and we say, yes, you're correct in saying we are being released from the responsibility for the sidewalks. This is us talking to Angela. It will now be up to the person or company who pulls the first building permit. We will pay the recording fees. Then the next email comes back from them. Please send me a copy of the completed form and after the documents are recorded. Thank you, Angela. And then the next, we answer them. Thank you, Angela. I will forward them to you when the county processes them. Then moving right along, I hate to do this, but this gives you kind of a series of events. We write Bill on June 9th, and we just attached the signed document from 510 Investments, Angela Kelsey, managing member. You should have all the other paperwork. Do you need anything else from me? Next documentation is a copy of the document that the county sent me that I had the Kelsey group sign and send back to us, and we sent a copy to the county attorney's office. Next, on June 15th, is a letter from Nancy from the county attorney's office. And Mr. Will Collins is CC'd, and Mr. DeBrawl is CC'd on this. Mrs. Paladin, sidewalk deferral is an internal process through the county attorney's office, the engineering department, and the planning department, and does not go to the Board of County Commissioners. Mr. Collins would like to meet with Mr. Paladin to further discuss the Paladin Place 2 sidewalks. Would you please let me know if Mr. Paladin is available with both Bill DeBrawl and Will Collins on Thursday afternoon, June 18th. If we can schedule the meeting, Mr. Collins would like Mr. Paladin to bring to the meeting any documentation concerning the transfer of sidewalk responsibility to 510 Road Investments, LLC. I will await a response. Both Will and Bill have Thursday afternoon open, so if Mr. Paladin is available, he can pick the time. Thank you. That was on the 15th. On the 16th, we write back, Nancy, what documentation would you need? Angela Kelsey of 510 Road Investments agreed and understands their responsibility of putting the sidewalks in, and Mrs. Kelsey signed the form you requested. Would you want that in writing, or would you like to have a telephone conference with Mrs. Kelsey when Joe comes in Thursday? Yes, Joe can meet with Bill and Will at 3 o'clock on Thursday. Joe did not mean to step on anyone's toes. He is aware of the protocol. He asked me if I could, any response from the attorney's office. I said no. Knowing that it doesn't go before the BCC, I thought it still had to go on the consent agenda, which is why in my last email I asked if we could get this on the next agenda, as we didn't think there was any meetings in July. My mistake, I apologize. I assumed, given the paperwork from Mr. Baird, was to see anything else was needed. And so I was responsible for that. I gave the paperwork to Mr. Baird to see if I had to include anything else. And then the next correspondence was on the 23rd of July. The 23rd of June, I'm sorry. Hi, Nancy. In reference to the meeting last Thursday with Bill and Will and Joe, am I supposed to pick up a revised agreement? I just want to get it to Angela at 510 as soon as possible. Next correspondence is on June 26th. On June 26th, Nancy writes back and copies Will. Mrs. Paladin, attached are the following documents regarding the sidewalk deferral: assignment of contract to construction of required sidewalk improvements, application for deferral of development, covenant to defer sidewalk development. Please have these documents executed by 510 LLC and notarized, returned to our office as soon as possible. Note that Mr. Paladin will need to execute the assignment when returning these documents. Please include a business check, etc., for $27. Also, when Mr. Paladin met with us about this issue, he was uncertain as to where the sidewalks were to start and stop. So as to avoid my confusion, we had our engineering department draw where the sidewalks are to be constructed, as shown on the red on the attachment on both application and covenant. We have also prepared the necessary agenda item, and we'll put this matter before the board as soon as we are in receipt of the original executed document. That was the next one. And then, moving right along, this basically is the documentation that was sent to us to have the 510 group sign. So we forwarded all of this on to them. And they basically responded and said that, listen, this is a lot more complicated than we agreed to. We don't care if the sidewalks are ever built. We're probably not going to build this for 10 years. We don't really care. We're not going to pay for legal fees. We're not going to have our attorney look at this. We're just satisfied. We signed the document you gave us, so it may not be done for you, but it's done for us. We're done. We're not going to be bothered with it. So they left that. And then the reason why I originally made my request for this to happen was based on this 2009-002 ordinance, which when it was negotiated and passed, and I spoke to, Bruce Parquette and other people, they said, well, just wait until we pass this ordinance and then it'll clarify it. And I said, fine. So the paragraph here under section 913.09, where it says under B, the developer, in parentheses owners, defines the area of the subdivision where sidewalk construction and security posting are to be deferred, and agrees not to sell any lots, units, or obtain any building permit for construction within the deferral area until sidewalks are constructed or security is posted. So that's what led to my first request to Bill to request that we get our cash money up that we put up for sidewalks that probably aren't going to be built for, I may be dead before they're built. I don't really know when they're going to be built. And basically when they do build the sidewalks, in reality, I get the money back whenever they build it. So they put the sidewalks in, I get the money back. If they're putting the sidewalks in, they should have the security deposit up when they put the sidewalks in so they get their money back. I shouldn't be getting my money back 10 years later. A lot of this stuff we did, and I'm responsible for a lot of it, with the Growth Awareness Committee. We did this back when times were really booming. Everything was moving forward. $10,000 or $11,000 was the furthest thing away from our mind as far as it being a problem. We were just trying to close on the lots. You can't close on the lots until you get a CC. You can't get a CC until you put up the proper bond or letter of credit. So either you don't close on the lots, or you put up your bond or CC or your letter of credit, which we did. It never was a problem previously in all the other subdivisions that I've done, which I've done several, because people started building right away. We built out Hidden Lake in a year and a half. We built out Shannon's Walk in a year. Now things aren't like that. It's back to where it was maybe years ago. It might take 12, 15, 20 years to build out a subdivision. So it's an entirely different process. So based on common sense, I would say that it just makes sense not to hold my money for sidewalks that somebody else is going to build, that no one lives on the street and one person owns all the lots. And they wrote us a letter, sent us an email saying they understand what they're doing, and signed the document that the county gave me, which at that time, that was the only document that I knew existed for this. The other documents that Mr. Collins sent me, they're not unreasonable. It's not ridiculous, but to them, it is. And to them, they have nothing to gain by signing all these papers that they would have to bring to their attorney. They have nothing to gain. I got no leverage. I got nothing to offer. I'm at the mercy of whoever. So I'm asking you in the common sense to try and help keep local people in business. We're talking about telling people outside that we want to be business friendly. We need to keep the local people here in business. That money helps me keep the subdivision looking like it looks. Instead of weeds growing up like Livingston Landing, instead of problems at Eagle Trace, instead of problems we have at Citrus Springs and other places. I'm using my money to keep that subdivision looking good. To have my money tied up for a sidewalk that you all control. This cannot happen without you all blessing it. They can't pull a building permit unless they put up security for the sidewalks at that time. They'll address it at that time, they said. They don't want to address it now. They don't get a CC on a unit until they have the sidewalk inspected. So you're totally in control of this. So I'm asking you under common sense and to help the local people that live here and they're trying to keep their subdivisions looking decent to release my cash bond to me because I can sure use it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions? Okay.
I have a question of Will. Have we gotten a signed covenant to defer the sidewalk development from 510 Road Investments LLC?
No. What we have is a contract with Mr. Paladin's company, Atlantic Coast Construction, to put in the sidewalks. And that contract provides that shall not be assigned without the written approval of the county. So what we provided to him was an application for the 510 group that owns those 12 lots to apply for deferral of the requirement to post sidewalk security, along with it a covenant where they would agree not to sell any lots or pull any building permits until such time as they posted security or put in the sidewalks, and an assignment of the responsibility that currently lays with Mr. Paladin's corporation to put in the sidewalks, that they would assume that responsibility. We don't have any contractual relationship with the 510 Road Investment LLC whatsoever, and at this point the obligation to install the sidewalks is on the developer. This group took down a block of townhouses but have not seen fit to say we'll be responsible to put in the sidewalks at the time they need to be put in, and absent any contractual relationship with them, we couldn't enforce the requirement of sidewalks at some point in the future. They haven't signed the covenant that said we won't pull building permits until we either post security or put in sidewalks. It's really 3 small pieces of paper, but they're having a hard time bringing themselves to take on that responsibility, I guess. And if they don't, the only security we have is that was posted by Mr. Paladin as the developer who agreed to put in the sidewalks. We're looking for the new owners to step into his shoes and take on that responsibility, but they haven't done so to this point.
So, Mr. Paladin, 510 LLC won't even sign the covenant to defer the sidewalk?
No, they signed the original document I sent them, And at that time, that was the only document that existed, so I told them I signed it, but they said, the county said that they had to sign it because they were responsible for the sidewalks. So they signed that, and then they emailed us back saying they understood what they signed and what their responsibility was. These documents I sent them, and I have documentation here if I need to read it, it didn't really exist at that time. And so I didn't know there was other documents that at that time I had to sign. I didn't know that. Maybe I should have known that, but I didn't.
Well, this process started out with a request to defer sidewalks, and it wasn't clear from the beginning what was being requested. Was it for all sidewalks within the subdivision? Would some of the lots still owned by Mr. Paladin require deferral? Would other ones not owned by him? Was that a request for deferral? We had to go into the property records, see who owned what lots. Then just before we finally had the meeting with Mr. Paladin, we determined that the single-family portion didn't need sidewalks because it was below 3 units per acre, and it was only the townhouses that were at issue. So that's when we started to focus on getting the owners of those townhouse lots to step into his shoes and agree not to sell or build until they either posted security or put in the sidewalks.
And that's
the impasse we're at.
And that's one owner, Pete.
On page 219 of our backup.
Yes, sir.
Is an application for deferral of development for lots 1 through 12 of Paladin Place 2.
Hang on, sir.
From 510 Investments LLC, signed by, I assume, Angela Kelsey.
Yes, sir. That's the managing member.
That's not sufficient for what we're looking to do?
We didn't have the maps showing what area was subject to the deferral at that point. In fact, we didn't have that until probably about June 20th. When we had the meeting on June 18th with Mr. Paladin, there was discussion as to whether the sidewalks were just in front of the townhouse lots, whether they went to the west property line where there's another subdivision that ties in. And we asked our engineers what was required, and they said just the sidewalks in front of the lots, although I'm not sure that our planning department necessarily agrees with that at this point.
Will? Commissioner O'Brien, you got any further?
No, that's good for now. Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to go back to page 210, and I think page 210 clearly shows the intent of what was being examined. It says, and I just point out on Exhibit A, number 5, subdivision B. I didn't mean subdivision. I meant subdivision B. List of lots is 1 through 12. So we're saying that no one knew about this until June. Well, this document is dated April 7th.
But it's also signed by Michelle Paladin as owner, and we subsequently determined that Atlantic Coast Construction didn't own those lots. So we had to get it signed by the party that owned it.
No, I'm just saying the intent was for that front portion, the lots 1 through 12. This is a document from your office, and then we fast forward to page 219, which again it says application for deferral of development, and again 5B says list lots 1 through 12, and it's signed by Angela Kelsey. So I think that...
Well, if you look at 210, that was the first application. It came in signed by Michelle Paladin, purportedly as owner. We checked the records. Their corporation no longer owned lots 1 through 12. The next page that would be the exhibit of where the sidewalks are did not depict them. So we went into the property appraisal to see who owned what. Then we tried to set up a meeting with Mr. Paladin and our engineers to determine where the sidewalks were required and where they were not. And when we did that, we provided them the application for deferral, the covenant defer, and the assignment of the sidewalk contract to the new owners. And we've yet to receive anything executed in return.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm just looking for an explanation that 210 and 219 aren't consistent with what the intent was, and that the applicant didn't follow through the procedure requested for both of these forms. And it appears that with 219 that what was requested was given.
And you know, when we did, let me read one more document if I may. It's real short. This is on the 16th. I set this aside. Nancy, what documentation would you need? Angela Kelsey of 510 Investments agreed and understands the responsibility of putting the sidewalks in. And Mrs. Kelsey signed the form you requested. Would you want that in writing, or would you want the telephone conversation? I read this earlier. But then the answer to that I didn't read. Thank you for your quick response. This is to Mrs. Paladin from Nancy, CC, Mr. Collins, Mr. DeBrawl. Thank you for your quick response. The meeting for Thursday, June 18th, 3 o'clock now is confirmed. This meeting is for who's on who and who's on first. The documentation that was requested, that Will is requesting, and it may not exist. And it is an assignment of the sidewalk responsibility between the developer and 510, and it goes on to say what Will said. But at that meeting, in fact, it did not exist. At that meeting, when we left that meeting, Will said, let's just finish it simple. I'll do a one-page document that says just what her email says. And that's the way we left it. But then when I couldn't just take pieces of paper and send it to them. I sent them the whole thing that the county sent me to send to them. I didn't want to just take 2 pieces of paper out. And then when they read what this was, like they were taking over a developer's agreement, development's done. I got my bond back. You know, then they said, what are we doing this for? We get nothing out of it. We don't care. We don't care if you ever build sidewalks. We don't know if we'll ever build these things in our lifetime. So that's when we come to a standstill. But before that, everybody was kind of cooperating because everybody understood where we're going. But when we got to making up this document that by your own writing didn't exist, this is when everything fell apart. I need some help here.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions?
Yes.
I've
got a couple. The first question is going to be more procedural.
Yes, sir.
So don't be thrown off by it, and then I'll get to a substance one. When you wanted to get this before the county commission, did you request to have the county attorney put it under the attorney matters?
We were planning to handle the application and the recording of the covenant at staff level, but the assignment of the sidewalk contract is required to be approved by the board. We sent all 3 pieces of paper at once with the hope that we'd get them returned and we could put them before the board at this meeting. But we didn't get the executed documents, so we couldn't put them in front of you.
But the question was from Mr. Paladin at that time. So I'm going to guess you just decided to put it under public matters.
Well,
okay, that's fine. But I just, as a sort of matter of point, I hate to vote on things that are just put under public matters because the public's not really notified that an action may take place and staff may not have proper time to prepare. Now I'll get to something substantive. Do you think you'd have any problem? From what I just heard from Will, almost all that's really needed is a map referring to the 12 lots. Do you think you'd have any problem getting Angela to initial a map with the 12 lots?
No, and you have that in your backup, sir.
Well, okay, I didn't see her. I didn't see her initial.
Well, I handed a copy. No, she didn't initial it.
Well, that's what I mean. Just because that ties it to the.
I mean, I can show you the contract between them and me.
No, that's okay. I just wanted. What I heard Will say a few minutes ago was that the paper signed by Angela didn't have the map attached. So my next question is to Will, asking him if that would be sufficient. If Angela initialed or signed the map with referring to the 12 lots.
That's an application for deferral. And if the staff approves it, which they would, then she signs a covenant agreeing not to sell lots or pull permits until security is posted. And the assignment of contract is there because we don't have any relationship with 510 that would require them to put in the sidewalk.
So the sheet that she's...
The covenant might tie that down.
So the sheet that she signed that's in the agenda at page 219 is not sufficient? Or that's why I'm confused at. Okay, I misunderstood you from what you said before.
She needs to sign 232, which is the actual covenant.
Is that the only thing she needs to sign?
No.
The map? That, again, that looks fairly simple. Just trying to see if we can get something as simple as possible so that maybe Mr. Paladin can get over the hurdle with the party from 510.
Well, I guess we could, if it was the board's pleasure, we could do away with the assignment of the contract, let Mr. Paladin off the hook, if Ms. Kelsey, on behalf of 510 Road Investments, sign the application and the covenant to defer development, because she wouldn't be able to get any building permits until the sidewalks were constructed or security posted.
Didn't she do that?
She says that in her email.
210, 219.
That's on page 232.
I'm looking at
The
232.
application had the covenant to defer the sidewalk.
Right. And
Okay,
the
so-
application didn't have any exhibits attached to it at the time.
So, Mr. Palin, do you think that you'd be able to get her signed the covenant, which is reason?
I don't know, Mr.
Commissioner
Swire.
Willard.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask if we can possibly table this for a week? And
Can we-
just-
Can we wait until I get to say something before we table it?
Well, we don't know that there was a motion, but,
That was just an idea.
okay.
That's fine, I'll wait till this, Chairman.
Sheriff, yes, thank you. Sure. Yes, go ahead.
A couple of simple questions. They come in to pull a permit for the townhouses. Can they pull a permit if they don't have sidewalks as part of the project?
Can Bob, maybe we should have Bob Keating answer that. I talked with staff, and they feel that we could refund this to our staff, and we have the comfort that we could, and this is paraphrasing, that we could give Mr. Paladin his money back and still have the ability to have him put sidewalks in with the new development.
Well, I think I know the answer to my question, but I'd like to ask them so everybody, and make sure that I'm correct, because I know Bob knows everything.
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating, County Community Development Director. Part of that permit would involve putting in the sidewalk along with the vertical construction of the townhouses.
Right. Now, secondly, let's say they don't put the sidewalks in. Can they get a CO?
No.
And without a CO, they can't sell the units.
Well, they can't.
So it'd be kind of like having in a situation like this that, maybe we ought to get a bond that says we've got to have roofs on the houses. I'm just saying that this whole conversation to me is, and we just went through this with, what was the name of the place? I don't remember, down on Indian River Boulevard, where they decided not to build the second phase, and we allowed them to get their bond back or take their cash back on
Providence Bay, was it?
Providence Bay, same thing. And I don't know, when we're going to be building anything here of any great speed in the next several years. And I think that the bottom line is it's already set up. You can't build it without your permits. You've got to include the sidewalks. And if you don't put the sidewalks in, just like you don't put front doors on, you're not going to get your CO. So I feel like we're already covered.
The only thing that we're looking at here, and the entire objective, is to get a continuous sidewalk system. So if the sidewalks are put in just in front of one set of townhouses, you get a segment of sidewalk that doesn't connect to anything.
Well, but if that's the only townhouse there's nothing to connect to.
No, there is. You can connect up to County Road 510 would be the idea.
Yeah. But I think we can still control that through the permit and CO process.
And that's outside of the multifamily, isn't it?
No, actually, the multifamily gets you to a sidewalk that takes you up to 510.
I think the fact that we allowed Providence Bay to do this, it would be only fair to allow this to happen, in my opinion. Because if we allowed Providence Bay, why can't we allow this? And I know that we have comfort of returning it's just, can legal get comfort? Administration has a comfort what we do have down the road.
I agree with Mr. Baird, and I think to be consistent, and also what we went through when we talked with Mr. Parquette and went through this whole process because of the slowdown and holding money that's not going to be used for God only knows when. I think it's consistent to do this, not only with that, but with other developments that are in the same situation.
Mr. Fletcher.
And just to add, we have countless portions of our county that are scored by sidewalks with no intent whatsoever, that when we held people accountable for what the original intent was during the building boom. We now have, if you get up in the helicopter, you see the amount of scores that we have of sidewalks that will probably be cracked and dismantled long before the development is re-excited once again. I believe there's no intent here, and we can actually hold the applicant their feet to the fire by having them bring in the sidewalks, what was the original intent? Was 125% of the total sidewalk project? That means it, roughly, we would need...
Yeah, we put up 125% cash of what the sidewalk project was guessed at, it was estimated the cost. We had a proposal made, we had engineers sign off on it, we submitted it to county staff, and then they approved the estimate.
So we're looking to see if you can throw in $10,000 worth of concrete into a project that's not moving forward, not anticipated for at least 5 to 10 years.
And it'll have to be taken out before they build, because there's no way the sidewalks would hold up once construction started with drywall trucks and concrete trucks backing over them. So actually that cost would be passed on to somebody, because the people would have to then pay me for my bond, because I would attach that to each lot, and then they would have to pay to put the sidewalk in again.
So, but then you would get returned to you about $2,000.
If I put the sidewalks in, yeah, I'd probably get more in that return to me. I could probably put them in for less than what the engineers approved with this market.
Between that and
I don't think it makes any sense to put them in, that's all. I just don't think it makes any sense.
It does to 5 cents.
Okay, being the only commissioner that hasn't spoke, I'd like to bring some closure to this. Commissioner Wheeler, I agree with you. How about a motion?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do.
I will second that if that's your motion.
Well, yeah, and I think we're covered by the permit process and the CO process.
Okay.
So my motion would be to return the funding just as we did with Providence Bank.
Okay, I've got a motion from Commissioner Wheeler, and I'll second it. Is there?
Discussion.
And
I just wanna say
absolutely.
something. I'm fully with you and Commissioner Wheeler in terms of the substance of this, but I don't like the process. I mean, I believe we should table it for a week, let staff have their say, give a week for the county attorney to get comfortable with it, but more importantly, let the public know that we're going to take a decision on it.
Okay.
So if we go ahead with this motion, I'll vote against it, not because I don't think we ought to
I'm
do
good with
what
it.
we're doing, just because I don't think we're following the
I'll add a
proper
week to the
process.
motion.
What's that?
I'll add a week to the motion.
A week?
Oh,
Table it for
bring it back, table it, and bring it back next week.
That'd be fine. Thank you very much, Commissioner Wheeler.
Okay, we've got a motion to table now, and I'm not going to second that motion.
Well, my motion would be to bring this back next week. I don't know. I'm trying to be cooperative with Mr. Solari's procedure on this to move it forward, but if you're going to withdraw your second, I'll leave it where it was. I don't know that anybody else is going to be here to talk about this. There's only one other owner, and they own all the lots, so I don't.
So your original motion stands?
Yes.
Then so does my second. Staff feels comfortable with this, and as far as the accountability, legal's trying to make the accountability for make sure the sidewalks go in. I can't believe we spent this much time on this. Is there any further discussion?
It is kind of supporting what Commissioner Story says. On our request to speak for public discussion, at the top it does say the commission does not vote on matters brought up under public discussion. So either we just need to change the form or change our policy, but I understand where Commissioner Story is coming from.
Okay. Anybody I wouldn't mind changing the form or the policy. We've got a motion on the table. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Commissioner Solari dissenting. Okay, thank you very much. Next we have, the next individual to speak is Mr. Spencer Simmons regarding utility usage.
Again, that one is removed.
Welcome, Mr. Simmons.
Good morning, Commissioners. Spencer Simmons, Simmons Construction Development, 118 43rd Avenue. On my original, or part of what we were going to discuss was on some utility usage fees, and give a little background on the project. I'm also representing Metals Country Square development over off of 43rd Avenue. We were originally on a septic system for the 8-unit office building, and when Cooksey's Trading Post rebuilt their development, they ran a force main down 43rd. And the owner of the property that we had our septic system on, there was an arrangement set back in '84 that when sewer came in, that we would be obligated to put a sewer system in, to tie into the sewer system and get off the septic system, and then he could subsequently sell the property. When Cooksey came in, that's exactly what happened. We began the project of putting in a lift station, a private lift station, just for our 8-unit development. It's the HOA is really a loose confederation of 8 businesses, small businesses, barber, tax accountant, and tailor. And so we began the project, and we came across a couple small problems dealing with the mainly the attorney's office and for what we were supposed to pay for impact fees. Mr. Olson, the utilities director, stepped in and brought some clarity to the subject and helped us straighten it out. I wanted to thank him and to give a special recognition to Jesse Rowland. He was very, very helpful in helping us. He was very approachable. I was able to speak to him on numerous occasions, and he worked very hard. As everybody in the utilities department, they were all worked hard, and they were approachable, and they, especially Jesse, bent over backwards to help me in this situation. So that part of the my discussion items has been taken care of, thanks to Stan and Eric and Jesse. The other item was that we had, when we did our force main under the road to tie into the tunnel bore to tie into the force main for our small lift station, we had put in a 4-inch main and a 4-inch tap. The gentleman to the north of us put a T into our line and began the process of tying into the force, or to the work that we had done. And I had came before Jesse and them and said, you know, I'd like to get part of that paid by the owner to the north of us, since, you know, he has just as much a benefit with that than we do. And they said, well, usually these are done prior to, you know, you doing the actual project. And I said, I understand, but, you know, we weren't, you know, I didn't really see them tying into that. I figured they would have to do whatever. I didn't know what was going to happen with the property or anything. We were just saying, look, we're going to sell the property. You have sewer. You need to get on it. The paperwork came in. We had to run the 4-inch tunnel bore under the road, tie into the force main. So I began a process of working out a developer's agreement to cover the half of the tunnel bore of the project. It was approximately a little over $7,000, almost $8,000. We were asking to have the project paid half by the owner to the north. And a couple of different paperwork going back and forth, working with Jesse and Mike Hotchkiss. I finally got all of it together, you know, all the T's crossed and I's dotted. It went up to the county commission's office, and as you know, I understand Mr. Solari not wanting to have discussion because of the attorneys not being on their agenda. But in this case here, again, like I think Mr. Paladin's attorney decided, we're not going to go forward with it, and we're not going to allow it to be presented to the commission. Here's the developer's agreement.
Space.
I'll share.
And you know, my situation here is that I don't understand why the attorney's office just decided that they were not going to allow this to be presented to the commission. And I understand that the one gentleman that we were asking to pay half, and we're looking at it, if you look at the paperwork, it's about a little under $4,000 that we were asking. And basically it's just the two of us. We're having access to the pipe, and we're saying, look, we think that he should pay for half because he's benefiting from the work that we've already done. And we didn't understand why the attorney didn't bring it forward. I do understand that the one owner, he wanted to dispute it, and I'm like, well, I can understand you might want to dispute, but I don't understand what your position are. You've already put a T in, and it's on the county easement. They have a right. I talked to Jesse, and they're basically saying, look, you know, we're going to let him do this no matter what. We don't want to have multiple tunnel bores going under the road, which I understand. And I don't really have a problem with them tying into, you know, the work we did. We were just asking that they would pay half, and the only way that I could ensure that the HOA got some of the money back was that we had to have a developer's agreement. because that was the only thing that the utilities department could say, okay, here it is, you have to pay this, as we're paying Cooksey for his development agreement. And my understanding then was, well, he's, the gentleman to the north is disputing it, and he's going to make an argument. And I said, okay, if I would have argued against Cooksey putting in their force main, would they said, oh, I'm sorry, Cooksey, there at the trading post, you're not allowed to do a developer's agreement? They're saying, no. That's, you have to have the developer's agreement. You have to pay him a portion, proportionate share of the work he's done. And that was all we were asking, and I did not understand why the attorney's office didn't at least allow this process to continue forward. And that's why I brought it today.
I've got a question, I guess, from Mr. Olson or Mr. Hotchkiss, one of the... It's not unusual for us to have a developer go in and lay utility lines, and whenever people tap into them, they pay a portion of what it costs for them to lay those utility lines. Is that correct?
Yep. For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. You're right. Normally, as a rule of thumb, what we do is we have a developer's agreement. Typically, they start before the project starts. This is one of the anomalies of this. We're sort of catching up after the fact. I think one of the concerns that in looking at this thing, and we can go back and take another look at it, but the issue was, one, it's after the fact, not that that precludes this from happening. The other thing, too, is that if in fact the line that was put underneath the road was the minimum size, is there some need for a developer's agreement? But I think what we probably ought to do is take a look at this thing, generally speaking. To be honest with you, the focus of the project that I've been looking at has really been the impact fee issue that we talked about. So we can go back and take another look at it and see if there isn't some middle ground on this process. I will say, as Mr. Simmons indicated, the other property owner is pretty upset about it. He's not exactly excited about joining in with this developer's agreement. So it's kind of we have to weigh the middle ground on this process. But we can take another look at it and see if it's practical and talk to Mr. Simmons and see if there's something to it.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, I just have one with this, and apparently I don't understand it, but what leverage do we have, or does the county have, to make this guy pay his portion?
Well, and that's typically not a problem because, as was indicated, we have developers agreements, countless developers agreements, where somebody comes in, they construct a line, and we basically have within the developer agreement that anybody, if a Commissioner Wheeler or Commissioner Fletcher or whomever were to come in between the time of the construction and 5 years thereafter, they're obligated to pay a proportionate share. We build it into this thing. We control that. So that's not unusual. We do that on a common basis.
Well, I understand that, but what authority do we have to make him pay the I mean, do we have a deposit from him that we could take from it to pay, or does this end up in court and some judge deciding whether the development agreement should be honored or not?
I think legal will have to answer, but we could not allow him to tie in the line unless he pays for his share.
But he's already tied in.
He's already tied in.
Well, he hasn't tied in yet. He's getting ready to.
Oh, well, then we got some leverage.
He's not at this point.
Okay.
So our position is, that, as was indicated, we don't want to have these things punched underneath the road, one right after another like this thing. So our goal is very clear that we want to minimize these bores underneath the road for the service line that we've got. And that was the intent of kind of keeping one and only one.
Well, I would agree. I mean, if they're using part of the force main or the lift station or whatever, they should pay a portion of whatever their impact is on that. So I just wondered if we have the ability to say, you got to pay or you don't hook up.
Let me take it even more closer to his particular project. On the opposite side of the road, when Cooksey put in a force main, we had a developer's agreement that obligated people that tied in, such as Mr. Simmons, who didn't exist at the moment. As people would come in over the next 5 years, he became obligated part of that developer's agreement between us and, in this case, Mr. Cooksey.
I understand all that. I just wonder who's got the latitude or the leverage to say, you got to pay this.
The county does. The county has the ability to basically mandate this at this point in time, but we limit it to a time period of 5 years. Beyond the 5 years, it sunsets. In essence, if Mr. Meeks, which is the individual just to the north of Mr. Simmons there were to come in 6 years from now, he would be sunsetted and wouldn't be obligated to tie into this and pay his proportionate share.
Okay, how old is this developer? I don't see a date on it.
Well, this one has not been put in place. We don't have a developer's agreement today.
It's not signed yet, yeah.
So,
Okay.
no, it's a consideration.
Well, that's why I say Jesse and Mike Hotchkiss, they helped me with the developer. I put it together, I brought it to them. Mike had reviewed it, redlined it, kicked it back. We did that 3 or 4 times before Mike was satisfied that the developer's agreement was worded properly. It's really not sitting at the utilities desk, in a sense. They, like I said, again, they were very helpful. When I realized that they were tying into the line was when our plumber was hired by the gentleman to the north of us, and they basically put a T into the line as they were doing it, which is smart. They did it now before, because once we were up and running, then to come back and cut in and put a T in it wouldn't be the best way to do it. So they just put a T in it so they are easily able to tie into it. And that was basically all they did. When he does his project, then he'll tie in. My real problem, I think, with this was that the attorney's office decided that they were not going to bring it forward. And that's where I have my problem. The utilities department worked very hard again. I didn't have that much work with Mr. Olson, but when he got involved, he took care of my issues quickly. Jesse worked very hard with me. That was who I worked with the most. And again, Mike, with the developers agreement, all that went fine. There was a little hiccup, and like I say, Mr. Olson took care of that. But the problem is where the attorney's office decided not to bring it forward. And I don't, to me, the county commission makes those rulings, and not the attorney's office, my understanding. And, in this project, like Mr. Paladin, if the attorney's office decides not to bring it forward, then we can't do anything. I know, like you were discussing with Mr. Paladin's project, that should have been brought forward, and the commission can make a decision on that. This is, if Mr. Meeks wants to, and the other issue here was Mr. Meeks was wanting to give us something. Fine. I don't really have anything on paper. There was some work that he was going to do that would help us on our drainage. But if I don't have a developer's agreement that locks him in, then again, I have no leverage to make him do what he promised me to do, and which would be fine. If he does what he does, my HOA says, fine, yeah, that's great. That'll help some of our drainage problem that he's going to be doing. We'll switch off. That's great. But if I have no leverage of the $4,000, then he's like, yeah, well, whatever, and he could walk. We have no leverage, and that's part of the problem also.
Okay. Commissioner Solari.
I just want to ask Eric. Eric, as an estimate, what do you think the cost difference is between the one owner having to punch under the road and tie in across the street versus just tying into the T?
You're probably talking about $7,000. If the owner to the north had to put it underneath the road, you're talking about approximately $7,000 for the directional bore.
Okay, so the leverage is there then.
Yeah.
We've got it.
Okay.
And clearly the county doesn't want this second bore underneath the road like that. I mean, because obviously the next time somebody does some work on 43rd, guess what they're going to hit? So that's not what we want to do. I think the only issue that may have been a concern was the fact that this was being done somewhat after the fact in terms of developers agreement. Probably this issue would have been resolved very early on if this had been thought of long before the project had begun. Maybe that's part of the problem, but again, I need to kind of do a little bit of checking on this thing to kind of make sure that's truly the case.
So would a week be enough for you to check on it?
Yeah. We can find out.
Table this one for a week? Make that into a
I'm good with that. We haven't heard from all the commissioners yet.
Right, and this has a lot of moving parts,
Yeah.
and I think we can give direction of staff to give it a time certain, bring it back next week.
Okay.
And make sure legal has reviewed it and all that.
I just want to make sure that I've got all the facts right in terms of what may be some difficulties or whatever the case may be.
Agenda deadlines. Maybe we need 2 weeks, because if he's got to he's got to get with everyone, and the deadline is tomorrow at noon, so he's going to have to get all parties. So if you could just give us 2 weeks and we'll bring it back. Are you comfortable with that?
Okay, I guess the only question is not to let them hook up.
I don't believe they're in a position at this point. I don't think their time is such that they're going to be hooking up anytime between now and that time period. But again, what I need to do is, to be fair to everybody, I need to get with the attorney's office and kind of make sure that I've got all the facts so I don't get out in front of myself on this.
All right. Any other comments, commissioners? Okay, was that a motion to table?
There was a motion to table it for 2 weeks and have it come back under utilities matters.
I got a motion from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner O'Brien to table. Motion to table is not debatable or amendable, so we'll go straight to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, next we have the notice of public hearing for July 14th. Mr. Collins.
This is a proposal to amend the purchasing ordinance to provide for local preference policy for local businesses, and also attached is a memorandum on local versus non-local bid award comparisons for the past fiscal year.
Okay. Next, we move to the community development. This is the approval of the bid for rehab of 5 homes approved under the Hurricane Wilma Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Initiative Group 2. Mr. Keating, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a simple bid award that would be on the consent agenda, except I need a acknowledgement that there is no conflict of interest. And staff recommends approval.
Commissioners, anybody have a conflict of interest in here to their knowledge?
No conflict here.
Not that I'm aware of.
No conflict.
No.
Okay.
Move approval.
Got a motion to approve from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner Flesher. No discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Keating. That moves us all the way to the Utilities Department, work order number 2 with PBS&J. The rebid of the well, piping, and additional model tasks associated with the consumptive use permit. What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Flesher, and I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next is the request to use general fund to cover landfill disposal fees for paste projects and other illegal dumping projects.
Move approval.
Second. Motion from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Flesher, and some discussion. Yes, Mr. Mehta.
Good morning, Commissioners. Monster Mehta, on behalf of the Utilities Department this morning. Just want to acknowledge the wonderful job that the Health Department is doing in our community with the PACE project. They've done some excellent projects in the West Wabasso area and Fellsmere area, and currently they're working in the Gifford community. And one of the things that they've identified is abandoned homes, and working with the community to kind of clean up the area. There's about 6 or 7 homes where the owners or whatnot are very low to very low income status. So they have basically have a contractor who's going to be working on a voluntary basis to demolish the homes and bring that material to the landfill. And again, the purpose of the agenda items to get approval to use the general fund for the landfill disposal.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passed unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, repair item 3, which is to repair the bar screen at South County Wastewater Treatment Facility.
Move staff recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Got a motion to approve from staff recommendation from Commissioner O'Brien and a second from Commissioner Flesher. Now for discussion, Commissioner Solari.
I'd just like either Mr. Olson or Mr. Hotchkiss to come up, or Mr. Southern. This wasn't apparent from the backup, and I just wanted to bring this out as a question I got, and the public might have it. And it was basically on the useful life of the repaired unit. The initial unit had a life of about 11 years. The cost of this repair is $44,000 versus a new unit of $120,000. Right. And I just wanted to have it out in the public, the expected life of the repaired unit.
Again, for the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. I've also got the wastewater superintendent, Rich Meck, is here if you need any questions. But we're expecting another 10 years life out of it. And clearly, cost effectively, it was far better to have it just simply refurbished for the same time period that we would get as it would be to spend the whole brand new screen like that. It just didn't make any sense.
And after I got a backup memo on it, that was clear, but it wasn't clear from the materials before. Okay. So I want to thank you for that. It's clearly a great savings to the...
Well, Terry and the wastewater superintendent, Rich Meck, has prepared that. So they're the ones that wear the white hat.
Well, thank them for that. Looks like a good deal. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. We've got a motion to approve. If there's no further discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us through the commissioners' matters and all the way down to the very end.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Oh, Commissioner Wheeler's item. Thank you. I almost forgot. Yes, sir, Commissioner Wheeler.
The only reason I added this is I would like to propose that we do a resolution in support of culverting that, and also anything we can do to within reason to make that a reality with DOT in that project.
I'll second that if that was a motion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And good luck with it. And I'll tell you, your best asset in this situation is probably going to be Chuck, because he went all the way through it, and I'm sure you've talked to him, and as well as David Gunner. He would like to see those piped instead of those culverts being there. So, with that being said, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Would you like to say anything? Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Got the tool?
If there's no further business to be transacted this time, I now declare this meeting adjourned.